Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. And, well, have you got some giants in your life? Have you ever faced any giants? You need to knock them out? Well, I think you're going to find our time together with our guest today to be pretty inspiring. And it all comes in a book entitled 5 Stones, Conquering Your Giants by Pastor Shane Stanford. And Brad Martin co-authored this book. And I am delighted to get into it. So, Pastor, nice to have you with us. How you doing, my friend?
I'm great, thank you. Great to be with you.
Yeah, and you pastor there in Memphis, right?
That's right, Memphis, Tennessee. I'm the senior pastor at Christ United Methodist Church.
Good for you, good for you. Well, how did you and Brad meet, and how did this come about?
Well, Brad is actually a member of my congregation and has been for 40 years, but Brad is a very successful businessman, was the former chair and CEO of Saks Fifth Avenue, and is very active in the business world, was recently named the interim president of the University of Memphis, and so is well known in this community. And Brad and I have been in a prayer group for about a year and a half, and we're talking about the 1 Samuel 17, which is the story of David and Goliath, and just began to talk about giants in our lives. And eventually that conversation became a study that we wrote, and then one of my publishers got a hold of it and decided they wanted to turn it into a book. So that's how the process took place.
Well, you know, what's so interesting and inspiring about the book, this is not only good for those who, have faced giants in their life as Christians, but also as businessmen, Christians in business. And I think the combination is unique.
Well, we hoped so. The publisher really liked the idea. Brad and I were just two friends really kind of talking about some challenges in our lives. I've had some medical challenges. Brad has faced some business and some family challenges. And we realized, as you just said, that no matter what that giant manifests itself as, we all face those challenges, but we also believe God has given us the tools to be able to confront and conquer those giants.
Well, now, pastors aren't supposed to have any problems.
Oh, I know, and apparently I'm not doing something right because I've had my share. So, but the truth being that every person, regardless, if we're in that journey for Christ, we're also going to have the adversary pushing against us, and come from anywhere.
So, what are some of your challenges, Pastor?
Well, I grew up a hemophiliac. I was born with that condition that I don't clot and I don't heal very well, and have experienced that since, of course, birth. And grew up a pretty normal child, but always getting hurt and doing the things that little boys aren't supposed to do, and then paying the price for it. But when I was 16, I tell people I went to bed as the captain of my golf team and president of my class and dating the prettiest girl in school, and was told the next day that I had probably 2 years to live because the medicines used to treat my hemophilia were contaminated with HIV, and then we later learned also hepatitis C.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, during the writing of this book, I started some chemotherapy treatments for a liver disease. So I have been fighting giants my whole life and still fighting them, but God is gracious.
All right, and what are some of Brad's?
Well, now, Brad will tell you he has had a perfect health situation, but it went through a divorce at what was probably the most successful time of his business life, and his family life was falling apart. He also went through some struggles at work that some very close employees of his were doing some things they shouldn't have done, and he had to step in there and face that giant of some bad ethics and some personal decisions that were harming him and the rest of the company. He also talks about having a child that has suffered with an addiction and in and out of recovery for many, many years. So, Brad has a different set of giants, but still as powerful as the ones I face every day.
When you look at the story of David and Goliath, David killed the giant.
Yeah.
And it appears your giant's still living a little bit.
we say in the book that sometimes survival is your victory until God takes care of it in a very different or personal way. We believe that some giants are put into our lives, much like the Apostle Paul's thorn in the flesh, to be a witness in the battle, not necessarily the victory, but to be the witness in the battle. And I know that one day I'm going to be healed. It may be on this earth. It may be when I'm face to face with Christ, but I claim that victory. Right now, I just want to be faithful in that battle. And I think that's what this book does. It helps us think through the victory, think through the entire process, but it also helps us think about what happens if every day is a new battle. And then we also talk about it at the end of the book about surrender. What happens when the giant is ourselves, when we are our worst giant? And we talk about David's later life. So, you know, these giants come in many different forms at many different sets of our seasons, but God is always there.
All right, let's get into this a little bit, because you do name the 5 stones, and I think these become the pillars in addressing the giants in your life, and very well done. But your first one, you talk about the first stone is a picture. Explain that.
Well, you know, we believe that we do have victory, and that many times the first step in being able to face a giant is being able to distinguish between fact or fiction. One of the most interesting parts of 1 Samuel 17 is that when David arrived, you know, all the professional soldiers had decided that Goliath was a giant that couldn't be killed. And so he had been made almost divine. And David comes back and says, you know, this guy's big, he's nasty, he's ugly, he's hard to defeat, but he's still a human being. He's still a giant. And we can go out and we can do something about that. So we tell people, you know, distinguish between fact and fiction. Know what's at stake, but more than that, know that, you know, God's already given you the victory. Are you prepared to take hold of that victory? So that's what that first stone talks about.
You know, what's interesting about that, Pastor, and I'm sure you know this, being a pastor and doing counseling, and of course I bump into it a lot, is that when the giant manifests itself in somebody's life, their first tendency is to be overwhelmed by it. Yeah. And even believers can get out of perspective. They don't believe that God is with them. They don't believe this giant can go down. They actually believe this thing's bigger. And if we don't get that attitude turned around, the rest of the journey is pretty tough. Oh,
absolutely. You know, I have this saying that I talk about most Sundays, and that is, I don't know the person who gets up and says, you know, today I think I'll screw up my life. Yeah. It usually is one decision that leads to another that becomes a pattern. And many times we don't see how big that giant's becoming until we're face to face with this huge challenge, and then we're so overwhelmed by that. So I agree with you completely that many times we become our own worst enemy because of what we've made that giant. We believe the fiction instead of the fact.
All right, let's go to stone 2, your tools.
Yeah. Well, this is the one that really kind of started the conversation, because you know, it says that David went and put on the armor of King Saul, and the armor was so big he couldn't move around in it. And David finally said, "I've got to take this stuff off. I mean, I'll get killed for sure if I try to, you know, amble out in all of this." And the scripture says that he goes back to the stream bed and he finds 5 stones, puts them into his pouch, and goes out to face the giant. And you know, Perry, I had an aunt, a great aunt, that used to say that the reason that David found 5 stones was because Goliath had 4 brothers, and David was going to be ready for all of them. I think more than that, I think David knew that he had a certain amount of space from the time this battle started until the time that he believed he could take this giant down, and so he chose 5. And I think every one of us has certain tools and gifts that we can use to face the giants. They're going to look different from person to person. And I even talked about in my sermon this past week, they're going to look different from situation to situation. My father-in-law, who's a 30-year Special Forces vet, you know, used to tell me, he'd say, you know, son, the thing that makes me a great warrior doesn't necessarily make me a great father and husband. And I have to know which tools to use when. And so we talk about finding the tools, the gifts that God has given to you for that season, for that situation, for that giant. And I believe God's given us what we need to be victorious.
You're a very wise pastor to say that, because so often people run out and get other tools of other people and other things to defend themselves, maybe an attorney or whatever. And all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, you're bypassing the very thing that God put in your hand.
Oh, absolutely. And I know for me that many times I have to look at the medicines I have to take on a regular basis and say, you know, those are the tools that I've been given. But then there are days that I know those medicines are not going to be as strong as just prayer and a good attitude to be able to make my way through whatever challenges for that day. So you have to look at how God provides from so many different angles for us. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's going to be armor and a sword, and sometimes it's going to be stones from a stream bed. But, each one of those can be victorious.
You said something there was also a real key, and that is that you yourself have to find your own strength in God. I mean, the medicines are there for one purpose and is a tool. But if you don't get your heart right and your faith straightened out, boy, you're in for a rough day.
You are. And it is, at the end of the day, it really is about you being in front of your God, and allowing Christ to work in your life and to be able to make a difference and give you the tools that God knows will make a difference in whatever battle you're facing.
All right, Pastor, let me take a quick break here. We'll be back talking to Pastor Shane Stanford. He's the co-author of this book, 5 Stones, Conquering Your Giants. Let me encourage you to check it out at the bookstore, at Evangel, or the discount books in Jacksonville, or online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Get a copy of it. When we come back, we're going to talk to him about a plan, your training, and your nerve in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back, and our special guest today is Pastor Shane Stanford. He is the senior pastor of Christ United Methodist Church in Memphis, Tennessee, and he's co-authored a book with Brad Martin entitled 5 Stones, Conquering Your Giants. Now, check it out at the bookstores or online. I think this book is a tremendous resource, and it not only has a lot of good things in here as far as content, but it also has a daily plan for each one of these stones for 7 days. So you got a plan and something to get a hold of each day of the week. And I want to commend you, Pastor, for doing that, because I think that is very unique.
Well, we think it's important too, and because this whole conversation grew out of a regular Bible study devotional time, we wanted people to experience that journey, because we know it's not going to happen overnight. And sometimes, as we said earlier, the battle is a long one and can be difficult. And so every day giving people a chance.
In your own battles, you ever get tired?
All the time. I'm tired today, actually. I have a busy schedule. It's been a long week. We have a big church. We have 6,000 people here in this congregation, and I have a wonderful staff, but it keeps us busy, and it's a great journey. But, sometimes when you're facing treatment, as I am in the midst of 48 weeks of chemotherapy treatment right now, it gets tough, and those giants seem awfully big some days. But that's why I know I'm not alone in this, not only with my faith in God, but I've got a great family. I've got a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful daughters and great friends. And I am not an unblessed man, certainly.
All right. We're talking about the 5 stones that David used, and they have turned these into really tremendous resources. Stone 1 is the picture. Stone 2 is your tools. Let's go to Stone 3, a plan. And I think it's reflected in how you laid the book out, too.
Yeah, we do believe that every one of us has been given a chance to have a plan. I believe firmly in the plan that God has for me. I believe firmly in the plan that God has for creation and has for you. And I don't think that because I don't believe we're on this journey alone. And because of that, I think that every one of us, God's given us a chance. But we have to take hold of that plan. And we also have to think through what is our strategy for dealing with this particular giant. Like I said earlier, the tools that are going to make you a great warrior may not make you a great father, may not make you a great counselor. And that's all wrapped up in that plan of knowing where you are, what you're facing, and what you're called to do in that situation. I call it just being reasonable. It's the common sense part of faith, where you step back and you just see the lay of the land. I love military history, and one of the great stories we tell in the book is about a siege on a village in northern France. And the reason it was successful, just long story short, was because the commanders had spent so much time not only knowing what the challenge was, but helping each person in that company know what that challenge was, where the X's and O's were before they went into battle. So we believe firmly in that plan.
What's so interesting about that particular topic is so many Christians just don't have a plan. They just seem to say, well, God, it's yours, you take care of it. And then they get kind of upset with him when he doesn't, at least according to their ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you the number of people in my ministry of over 20 years now that I've had and said, you know, I can't believe God let me down. I can't believe God didn't show up when I needed him the most. And first of all, God does show up in every situation, but we have to take hold of that. God calls us to be responsible and to utilize that free will that God's given to us to be a part of what God's doing in our life. And I agree with you completely. I think some people just they kind of live by the seat of their britches, as my grandfather used to say.
All right, let's go to stone number 4, and that is your training.
You know, and this one is what we Christians just call a strong, study, devotional prayer life. I had a friend of mine who used to say, you know, love Jesus, pray, and read your Bible. And he said, if you do those 3 things, you're going to be way ahead of the curve. And we believe, just like the training guide that's in the book, that you have to spend every day with the Lord. Mm-hmm. And that is your way of training. Brad Martin, my co-author, tells the story of a situation with his son, that when his son had a very serious incident with one of his addictive situations, going to find his son, eventually going to the hospital, Brad said that habitually I grabbed my Bible because I knew that was part of what I had been trained to use in this situation. We want people to be able to grab the tools, to grab the Word, because that's second nature to them, maybe even first nature by the time that training gets through.
Yeah, the old saying is pray and obey, right?
Absolutely. Love it.
Okay. Number 5, your nerve.
Well, this one is my favorite. It says in 1 Samuel 17 that after David had finished all the talking, he'd had enough of it. It says he ran boldly to meet the giant. And at the end of the day, you can have a clear picture, you can have your tools in order, you can have a plan, and you can have trained. But there comes a time where you have to take off running, and you have to go meet that challenge. And I know that with my daughters, I'm very clear with them that nothing substitute for good, strong, faithful nerve in some situations. And saying, you know what, God, I trust you. I don't understand all of it, but I trust you. I love the story, Perry, of the man who falls off the side of the cliff and catches one branch, and he's holding on, and he hollers to heaven, is there anybody up there who can help me? And the voice says, I can help you. And the man says, what do I do? And the voice says, let go. And the man says, can you say that again? And the voice says, let go. And the man finally says, is there anybody else up there? I think sometimes you just got to listen to that voice and have a nerve that the Bible says the world doesn't understand. And that's the boldness that we talk about. So.
And all this time he was 2 feet off the ground.
That's right. I love that. That's a great way to end it. So,
well, the other part about that story is, at the end of the day, the only thing that Goliath did was stand there and intimidate David.
Absolutely.
And David said, I had enough of this nonsense, and boldly went after him.
Well, I never realized when they were teaching me this story in children's Sunday school, I never realized how graphic it was. There was a point where David said, enough's enough. And I don't think David knew exactly how it was going to turn out, but he was going to do something about it. And it's the whole bully factor, I call it, and talk about it in the book, that most of the giants we face are not as big as we have made them to be. And there are some that are very serious and may be almost unbeatable except for the grace of God. But most of those giants are just bullies who are trying to take your eyes off of Christ.
What does Brad mean, the co-author, Brad Martin? What's he mean by surviving the battle in that chapter?
Well, Brad knows, for instance, with his son, who is just a wonderful young man, a great young man, who has just a tough disease and a tough set of choices in his life that some he's been able to make with great faith, and some he's lost some of those battles. Brad says it's every day. That his son's survival is victory every day against the giant, and he knows he for some reason God hasn't removed that giant, and so Brad says they get up every day and they go fight that giant again, and it's day to day. And I know for people I've met at the treatment center who are going through other types of very serious chemotherapy, I watch and they show up the next day, and you know what, Perry? That's their victory. They've shown up, and they said, today God will get the glory. And what an amazing testimony that surrender and survival can be witnesses to the greatness of God.
All right, I wanted to lead into surrender because, well, you need to explain that.
Well, we know the end. We know the end of the story for David.
Right.
We know that David did a lot of wonderful things, and then one night it says in Scripture he was walking on the rooftop, and he was bored, and he had surveyed the expanse of his kingdom, the Scripture says, and he noticed Bathsheba. And because of Bathsheba, he got into a series of mistakes and lost a lot of battles with giants, including having her husband murdered, having an adulterous relationship, a child out of wedlock. The child ends up dying. I mean, it is one of the most tragic stories in the Bible. And so I asked the question in that chapter, how do you go from a shepherd boy killing a giant like Goliath to being your own worst giant? And that sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And the job we have to do is be able to surrender. You can't defeat that giant by yourself. You have to turn that over to the Lord. And people who are going through addiction or brokenness or making bad choices, your best weapon is to, there was a young lady that recently was attacked by a bear, and I just kept thinking of this scene where she had learned that if you get into the fetal position and just be still, that the bear scratched her pretty good, but then left her alone. But it's when you try to run that bear, they said, would have done the most damage. Now, I don't know the full extent of bear safety. I'll just tell you that up front. But I do understand that concept that there's sometimes that I just have to be the child and let God be the father and surrender and stop trying to make my own decisions. And that's what I mean.
Well, you are an inspiration, and I just want to encourage our viewers and listeners to check out this book. I think you'll find it to be a tremendous resource and encouragement. It's called The 5 Stones, Conquering Your Giants. Pastor Shane Stanford and Brad Martin co-authored this book. Check it out at the bookstores. And I just want you to know we pray on our Tuesday on our staff meetings. We're going to be praying for you and just declaiming Psalm 91 over you today, Pastor.
Praise God. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us. God bless you, my friend.
You bet. Take care.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, we're all concerned about our country and its future and where it is. And one of the questions that sometimes we ask, is the mainstream media giving us the facts and telling us the truth, and who can you trust? Well, David Harsanyi addresses this in his book called Obama's Four Horsemen. And so join me in that conversation with David. Well, what a delight to have with us today one of the gentlemen that writes for Human Events. And of course, if you are a subscriber or you on the website, you'll see David Harsanyi's articles. In fact, his latest one is out, pretty interesting. You may want to check it out. Guess what? In 2006, Obama explained exactly why debt matters, and he writes about that. He's also the author of a book called Obama's Four Horsemen. The disasters unleashed by Obama's re-election, and we want to talk to him about that book today. There's a copy up there on the screen, and let me encourage you to check it out at Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon. David, nice to have you with us. How you doing, my friend?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Boy, your book is fascinating, to say the least, and I think here we are only a couple of weeks into this second term, and we're kind of still trying to catch our breath. How did it happen, and where are we going? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm catching my breath, but you know, it's the plan. I think Obama likes to really throw a lot of things at Republicans and a lot of things at Americans, a lot of populist talk and some policy occasionally. And I think, as I write in my book, we're all going to end up paying a pretty steep price for that in the future.
Well, on somewhat of a side note, do you think that he personally is this smart, or is he representing a group of people who have a socialistic agenda that we just can't live with?
Well, I actually think he's pretty smart. I don't know if he's as politically savvy as people think, because he does make a lot of mistakes, but they don't seem to hurt him. So I think just generally speaking, though, he's not a dumb man, clearly. And the socialistic agenda is just, he came at the right time in history, and now, you know, those policies that those populist policies that he talks about, the American people seem to like them, or at least over 50% of the American people seem to like them, and they're working for him. And he's put the Republicans in a bad spot. And frankly, Republicans are pretty weak. They don't have very good leadership or charismatic leaders to counter those arguments, and that's why we're left in what is sort of a corroded democracy in a way.
All right, you have named the Four Horsemen as dependency, debt, surrender, and death. Boy, I don't like the last one.
Well, it always ends that way, unfortunately, for everyone.
Yeah.
That's inevitable.
Do you think he is in somewhat of a high throttle mode the first 2 years of his second term, facing the 14 election? I mean, if he's going to do damage, it's now pedal to the metal these next 2 years?
He might want to, but it's going to be difficult. I think, frankly, I think most of the big agenda items, especially Obamacare, wouldn't have been possible now, and certainly even in the second part of his first term. Now, if Democrats win back the House in 2014, I think that then you're looking at something that's really going to be remarkable in a very terrible way. And obviously, they're the Supreme Court justices. If God forbid one passes away, or if they retire, you're going to have one more judge, and that's going to essentially open it up for him to do nearly anything he wants, because the Supreme Court hasn't been much help at all. As it is, one more liberal judge, it won't be at all.
We've been watching the House fight the dependency issue at least a little bit. I am somewhat disappointed, and leadership isn't pushing back harder, but they are pushing back a little bit. And now it looks like in the Budget Committee they may come up with a budget that does not include Obamacare. What does that mean?
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't mean much. I mean, Ryan's budget eliminates Obamacare, but what the chances of that passing through the Senate, or the chances of that actually being signed by the president, is nil. So it doesn't matter. But I think the Ryan budget does forward many interesting ideas, and I think the Republicans have relied on platitudes. And platitudes I agree with, about cutting government and so forth, and more liberty. But I think that they need to have reform ideas that they can champion. And I think that block granting Medicaid, having a private option in Medicare, these things, I'm not saying they're all very popular right now, but it gives Republicans ideas that they can take to the American people and say, here's what we want to do, and argue for them, and try to convince people that they're right, at least.
Your second horseman, debt. This president has just unleashed debt on this country at a rate that we just cannot even begin to comprehend. Is this any way salvageable?
No, not really. I mean, I think that we will have a debt bomb go off in some way. I don't exactly know what it'll look like. I mean, we always talk about $16 trillion in debt, but really the debt, and if you start thinking about the unfunded liabilities, is more like 50 trillion or whatever the number is. It's a huge number. Once interest rates start going up, servicing that debt is going to take a huge part of our budget. So it's crazy to think that it's going to get any better. In fact, the president, I think yesterday, said that he didn't think debt was a problem at all. He said it was sustainable for the next 10 years. So, and then when you factor in what's going on in Washington right now, and the ideological divide, there's just no way that there are going to be any genuine reforms when it comes to entitlements, the thing that really drives debt. So I don't see how anyone could think that we're going to solve that problem until it becomes so big that we have to make real cuts. And think about the sequester. I mean, people treated it like a national trauma, and it wasn't even really a cut. What's going to happen when you really have to cut things that people depend on? Unfortunately, you've expanded dependency at the same time, so those two things will not mix well in the future.
So has debt been kind of the main piece in his arsenal to bring about dependency?
No, I think to him, debt is irrelevant, really. You know, I think that he has programs in mind and he wants to do certain things. He wants to pass these social engineering projects and he wants to hand out goodies to people to win elections. And because he thinks that that's the way, you know, the economy can grow and things are fairer and all the stuff he says. And I think dependency is something that he's focused on because he believes it's a more moral country if we're more dependent. I think the opposite. I think dependency strips you of your initiative and self-worth, but he thinks the opposite. The debt is sort of a side effect, or not side effect, but, you know, sort of a residual thing that adds up, and he thinks it's irrelevant. But at some point, someone, our kids, my grandkids, someone is going to have to pay a very heavy price for that kind of policy making. And let me just say this. It's not as if Republicans, when they were running things, were great. So it's not just Obama, but he's the guy who sort of embraced all these things that I think are destructive and you know, and perpetuated them.
Why can't we handle some kind of a cut? I mean, the sequester was just, you know, that was overblown. We got through the fiscal cliff. We got some kind of song and dance going on with budgeting right now. The raising of the debt ceiling. I mean, the whole thing has just been a great big joke, and you kind of wonder why doesn't this administration or the Democrats understand you cannot spend more than you're taking in? Why can't they understand the simplicity of that?
Well, listen, I think there's some debt is not the end of the world, frankly, in the sense that if you have long-term projects for infrastructure and things that you really need, in some sense, you want people who are going to use it in the future to also pay for it. So I understand that part of it. But they've taken it to a place that's, or sometimes, and let me just go back, sometimes you have emergencies like a war and you need to have some debt. The problem is that they've sort of embraced it now. They're almost pro-debt. They're almost pro-deficit in a way. They think that if you're not spending on government, even, in fact, when revenues are lower, they argue to spend even more because they think that that's what drives the economy. So I think they understand it, but I think that they think they can fix it when the economy gets better or when they start taxing rich people. And I guess those are the two choices. So even though taxing the rich brings in such a small amount of revenue that it can never help us solve that problem. The only way we can solve this problem is to reform entitlements and pray that the economy booms, because then revenue will go up.
Well, he's been enjoying some interesting days on Wall Street. I mean, the stock market's bumping around, but we know that's a house of cards.
Well, I'm happy when the stock market does well. It's good for many Americans with their pension funds and retirement funds and all those things. But we can't look at the stock market and say, hey, you know, this is a reflective of what's going on deeper in the economy. We have stagnation for 4 years. That's the real economic situation. Well, you know, very little job growth.
All right, so we got a president that's pro-dependency of everybody on federal government, pro-debt. He's handling it like it's a candy bar. And what is our foreign policy this day? Do you have any idea what our foreign policy is?
No, I mean, I don't. And that's what I write about. I think that our foreign policy has been to treat America as if we were equal to everyone else, to shy away from believing in exceptionalism. And I don't argue in a neoconservative way that we have to go, you know, bomb someone, though, as you know, some people probably deserve it. But I argue that we have to stand for something. If we don't stand for anything and we don't care about what's best for us in the world, then we're going to be in trouble. And I think if you look to North Africa, we're going to have a lot of trouble there. We've allowed democracies to form that are now basically turning into Islamic states, because democracy is simply a reflection of the morality and the belief system of the people who vote. And the people who vote there, many of them, their belief system is antithetical to the things that we believe in, and that's bad news for us in the long term.
Can we afford to turn our back on Israel like he's doing it?
We can afford it, but in the long run, I think it's bad news. This is a nation that shares many of our values, and that's important, especially in a region like that. Mm-hmm. It's also a country that is sometimes our lone ally in the world, or used to be before Obama became president. So we shouldn't do it for moral reasons, because they're the good guys. but also for for legitimate, real, tangible foreign policy reasons, we shouldn't do it, because Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon, and there will be a war in the Middle East because Israel cannot allow that to happen. It's a red line, as they say, and there's just no way around that I can see.
And your last one, death. I mean, I've never seen a president so pro-death. I mean, his battle against the pro-life community and people of faith has just been unbelievable, and yet he turns around and calls himself a Christian. I mean, it just doesn't add up. But we're seeing this agenda being shoved down our throat. Where is this going, David?
I don't know. It's a nihilistic worldview, in my opinion, that treats life this way. And I'm coming to you from a secular point of view here, in the sense that I'm just saying there's a rational argument for life. There's a scientific argument for life, and that's all been stripped away in a very cynical way, and where we now use abortion as some kind of political hammer, in the sense that we say, if you're not on our side, if you're not pro-choice, and incidentally pro-choice in every direction, in the sense that not late-term abortion, he's for it. He's never been against any sort of abortion. Then you hate women. Then you're warring against women, and then you make it a right that's even more important than the First Amendment, and you want and then you demand that other people pay for your right to do something that they find immoral. And even if I didn't find it immoral, I wouldn't want to pay for it. So I shouldn't have to pay for other people's abortion. And there are demographic reasons why this is bad for us, but also I think that the pro-life movement's made a lot of headway in very strong arguments, and now I feel like that's going to turn back in a bad direction.
Well, you have nailed it. The Four Horsemen: dependency, debt, surrender, and death. It's called the Obama's Four Horsemen: the disaster of unleashed by Obama's re-election. David Harsanyi there. You can check it out. It's on the screen. And check it out at Barnes & Noble or online at Amazon.com. And, of course, be sure to be a subscriber to Human Events. You're going to see David's writings in there in his latest one. I'm out of time now, but I do want to get back to you on that last article you wrote. But let's stay in touch, because I really appreciate and the value of your contribution to the arguments out there. Thank you, David.
I appreciate that very much. Thanks for having me.
All right. Fascinating book, and you may want to get a copy of that. Well, coming up next, there's a great event coming up in Grants Pass. We want to talk about it. We're going to have Pastor St. John Eyre in the studio. In fact, he's here already, and we'll talk to him in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, we're back, and I'm really honored to have back in the studio with us today Pastor St. John Eyre. He's the children's pastor at Parkway Christian Center in Grants Pass, but he's also the coordinator of the Josephine County Kids Care Fair. Coming up, huh?
It is coming up. It's going to be this Saturday,
wow.
9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We are excited.
Wow. What is it?
Well, it's an outreach opportunity. We put this under Community Bridges Foundation, which was a nonprofit started by Parkway Christian Center that houses things such as Celebrate Recovery and divorce care, different things that we do that are community focused. Our goal is to service 1,000 kids this year, providing them back to school supplies, free backpacks, but in addition to that, they can come in for free eye screening, hearing screening, dental screening, bike safety check. We also have several community organizations that have just embraced this program in our 11th annual year of this. And they are on board as well, bringing many of their services from our fire department, our police department, our Lions Club, Kiwanis Club. We have many organizations that have been on board with us for this year. Wow, that's exciting. And is there anybody can come? This is open up to residents of the county, for Josephine County, who have children entering into kindergarten through 12th grade. Wow. What an outstanding thing to do, and looking for 1,000 people, and you're going to health, safety, education, supplies. What a great idea. How many people are involved to make this happen? Oh, you know, just it's countless to think about, and I haven't even met everybody that's involved behind the scenes. You know, I'm getting phone calls from folks who are connected in this one way or another. It becomes so large that you really just start to trust the Lord to manage some of these, and He's doing a great job. He's a great manager for this. But I just learned yesterday too that Josephine County Transit Authority that runs bus service Monday through Friday, we come to find out that our folks in Cave Junction, we're going to have a hard time getting into Grants Pass.
Right.
They're actually running a bus schedule on Saturday to help get those folks in just for this event. And we're pretty excited to see even just partnerships like that coming on board. We didn't go out and approach them, but I believe that someone in Cave Junction probably talked to them about it, and they're stepping up as well.
Now, you're also reaching out to foster kids, low-income children, and get the word out to them, is right?
We do. We have a long history of really trying to reach into those areas there. That is a group easily overlooked. And so we've worked close with DHS. We have also worked very closely. I've been on the phone with almost every shelter manager that we have right there within Grants Pass about who do you have in your home that we can help. We understand that some of those folks, anonymity is important for them. So we've come up with ways that we can keep that privacy for them, but still allow them to fully participate in this event. For that, we want to make sure we don't miss anybody this year. Last year, we serviced just under 500, and we had to turn away about that many because we ran out of supplies. The economic recession was in full swing. Donations were down. This year, we just really prayed and said, God, you need to open some doors that seem unopenable for us. And we have just seen many things come through for us. It has just been amazing. Our Rotary Club stepped up and wrote us a check for $1,000 for this event to help underwrite some of the costs. We've had many businesses open up their drop sites to us to allow donations to be made when they're shopping for their own kids to help contribute to the good of our community as well.
Wow. All right, so this is really kind of a all-encompassing community outreach, and this is, I mean, the magnitude of this thing I think is starting to unfold in my mind here, what you're doing here. And so again, run through all the things that are going to be available that day.
Certainly. The things that we had last year that are in play still this year is the bike safety check, as well as the opportunity to buy low-cost bike helmets. Kids grow very quickly, and as they do, their heads have gotten bigger, and so they may need a new helmet to be safe when they're riding back and forth to school. We are again bringing on the hearing screening that they can take place as well, and that's who the Lions Club is sponsoring that portion of it for that. We also have new this year is Dr. Buchanan's office, a local dentist office in our town, is doing the dental screenings, and then we also have vision screening by the eye care group of Grants Pass is bringing their staff on board to help.
Wow.
So that's good. The backpack program, new partnership. We're super excited. There's an organization called Our Foster Kids, Inc. that has existed in Grants Pass to help foster kids with back-to-school supplies as well as Easter and Christmas. We started to meet with them and asked a little bit about what they were doing, and they started to meet with us, and they said, we are so excited to partner with Parkway Christian Center and Community Bridges, and so they are a very close working partner with us this year. They have normally serviced 370 kids last year. It's about their average for kids in the foster care system that could benefit. When we talked about our program, we said, you know, we'll be looking at about 1,000. Without blinking an eye, they said, we are going to step up and believe that we can gather that in our community. It's almost quadruple of what they're, or triple the amount of what they've serviced, but we are so close. Last night I did a rough count, Perry. We had about 720 backpacks in-house right now. We are shooting for 1,000, so there is still a great opportunity for the faith-based community to come on board and be a partner with us and help fill that void.
Okay, so the goal is to get every kid a backpack, right?
That is our goal, everyone that needs one. And honestly, these folks that are in need, they start lining up at our door at 6 a.m. Even though the event doesn't start till 9 a.m. They will start lining up. We noticed last year when they did this, they were so in need of the backpack school supplies that they wouldn't necessarily visit our other vendors. So this year we changed our structure around.
You got to go through this route to get there.
Well, we wanted them to have the opportunity to be guaranteed to get a backpack and feel comfortable stepping out of line to visit our partner vendors.
Okay.
So this year, if you were, let's say for example, if you were the student coming to us, you would just simply check in with us, go through our very brief registration process. We would give you a guaranteed card that gets you a backpack, and you visit each vendor, get your card punched at each vendor, including ice cream from the Rotary Club. And then when that card is completed, then you can go in and receive a backpack as well, and not have to worry about, will there be one there for me? Will I be able to get one?
Yeah, that's really well organized. That's wonderful.
Yeah, Salvation Army got on board with us this year as well. They've been doing a fantastic job. They've typically have focused on Wolf Creek area, which is an area that is in great need as well. And so we've got just, again, some of our other partners, peer partners with us.
This is outstanding. It's called the Josephine County Kids Care Fair, and again, it'll be this Saturday there at Parkway Christian Center, starting, well, at 9 o'clock, but I'm sure people will be lining up before that. And it looks like the whole community is involved. The bottom line here is you have reached out to the community. I mean, this is the church in community.
It is. We've had a local news affiliate station come down and do an on-site filming last week. We were featured in the Daily Courier on Sunday, and they're coming on site again on Saturday to do a follow-up feature with us as well. We're here with you. We're also doing some paid advertising in 2 of our local publication newspapers that go out this Wednesday and Thursday to our homes to make sure our community is aware of it as well. We've received lots of phone calls about it already. I think my office manager is probably coming to her wit's end of how to stay on top of it with me. So I gave her a back rub the other day and said it's going to be okay. We're all going to get to heaven.
Now this is a part of what you call Bridge to Community. This is just one part of it, because you have others you're talking about.
Yeah, the Community Bridges Foundation was started under the advisement of our lead pastor at Parkway Christian Center, Dennis Weber. And one of the things that we noticed is there was many organizations that wanted to offer grants, but one of the things that they were challenged with is if it was made out to Parkway Christian Center, then that was a little bit of a challenge. We also looked at, we have many things that we do specifically for our community that don't just involve Parkway, but involve other churches in our region as well. So we went ahead and established this nonprofit and received our credentialing of it, created its own board as well. And Community Bridges Foundation exists as that entity. It also has a community counseling center in there as well to help with families or individuals or couples that are in crisis management or just needing some guidance of how to improve their quality of life. So this has worked out as a wonderful new venue to have.
Wow. And you have other workshops, divorce recovery and other things that you do.
Yeah, we do grief share. We have, for those that have lost a spouse or a loved one, we also offer divorce care for those that are facing a divorce. And it's hard sometimes in a broken relationship. How do you work through and walk through that with a partner who is agreeable or unagreeable? And you may need some help with that. And that works out to be a great networking. Celebrate Recovery is a very large, valuable ministry that is offered nationwide. And we have high attendance with that one as well. We're super excited to continue to be a part of that. Not only that, but Celebrate Recovery also now offers in Grants Pass Celebrate Kids, whereas a portion of Celebrate Recovery for children who are dealing with parents who are trying to get their lives back on track.
Wow.
So it's my goal, and the Lord has really just given charge to my heart, care for those children and care for those orphans.
You know, there's something unique happening in Grants Pass. I will admit this, and of course we've had others on when you guys do the other big community thing called Serve Grants Pass.
Yes.
Where all the churches come together. That's been very successful.
Yeah, over 2,000 in our community will just step up with the expectation of nothing in return, and that is to give your time. This year, Serve Grants Pass went from just being a one-day event to actually being a week-long event.
Wow.
We followed it up by a big community celebration, but we're in the schools, we're in the shelters, we are where the widows are, who houses need painting, roofs need replacing, concrete needs to be poured on that, and all of those services are donated all that time. And Serve Grants Pass, it's not just people like you and me, but it's our children involved.
Right.
So we are really, as a community, coming in and helping our community.
This is wonderful, and I just again want to let you know that this Saturday is the big day, the Josephine County Kids Care Fair, and it's going to be in there in the parking lot at the Parkway Christian Center. It starts at 9, goes till
4 p.m.
All right.
And right now, if folks still would like to make donations, we have several drop sites, businesses that they can do that. It includes in Grants Pass, Walmart, Big Lots, Oil Can Henry's they can go to as well, Sears, Parkway Christian Center, Keller Williams Realty of Southern Oregon. We have the Sterling Banks in Cave Junction and Grants Pass are accepting donations as well. Albertsons, both of our shopping stores. So we have several of those that are in there that folks can drop off. And if they want to make a cash contribution, they can make it out to Community Bridges Foundation and drop that off or send it in the Parkway Christian Center.
Thanks, my friend. Blessings to you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me today.
I'm waiting to hear the good news on the other side of this next week, okay?
I appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.